Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast. And my name is Kurt North, and joining me to talk about Red Dwarf 10 this week is my co-host, Mr. Mark Adams. Mark, how you doing?
I'm all right. I like talking about Red Dwarf. We do it occasionally on this podcast.
Well, this is behind the scenes, as people will already know. This is the final block, which means, do you know what that means?
New co-host.
Not new co-host. Well, yes, a new co-host, but it also means that you can watch Red Dwarf 11.
Oh.
How good's that?
Are we watching it together again, or are we
Absolutely
fucking that idea off? Oh. So I can't watch it tonight while you're all asleep?
No, we've got to watch it
sad.
together. Joining me and Mark is Mr. Carl Bryan.
Hello, Kurt. Hello, Mark.
Carl, you can watch Red Dwarf 11 tonight.
Fuck off.
Because you've seen it. You're all right. Yeah.
But if I watch it, I'll have seen it too, and that'll mean I can watch it lots of times. Is that how it works?
But we can't tell when you're going to be able to some reactions on it, do we? Sorry, mate. I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
But we get to talk about Red Dwarf 10. Carl, this is your first time on Red Dwarf 10 coverage. You've obviously watched it with us at the time. You've seen it before. You've rewatched it again. Up to this point, what do you think of Red Dwarf 10 up until this episode, Dear Dave?
I really enjoy Red Dwarf 10. It's such a relief after Back to Earth because the jokes are there, the quality is there. Yeah, it is, as we'll get into behind the scenes, the budget wasn't there, but for what they did with the budget is phenomenal, to be honest, as we'll see in this episode and the other episode in this block. This, to me, is just a really good series. And I think it's a really good series, and I'll probably mention this a few times during this episode, because I reckon Doug had it in his head, this was it. They thought this was going to be it. And that's why this series is as good as it is.
Mark, Dear Dave, what were your first reactions to it then, just before we get into the main episode? What were your first initial thoughts when you, if you think back to that time when we watched it all together and your subsequent watches, how do you feel about it?
I really loved it. It has a lot of kind of like throwback gags, references, and I like what they've done with the vending machines. I mean, there was always the vending machine gags. You know, today's fish is trout a la creme. It was dumb as fuck. And Lister fucks a vending machine. Good.
Fair news. Carl, what do you make to it?
I really enjoyed this episode. As I say, we'll get into this. Well, this episode technically wasn't to exist. It was going to be something else. But to say that they cobbled this episode together sort of with chicken wire and hope, it's a really strong episode. The performances are spot on. You've got Rimmer's got his plot. Lister's got his plot. Crichton's got a bit of his plot. And the cat doesn't really have a lot, but when he turns up, he does some good stuff.
He does amazing stuff, but we'll get into that before anyone says anything about it.
If that isn't Red Dwarf, then I don't know what is. The cat underutilized, but fucking great when he's on screen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What I do like about it, as I say, it's cobbled together. I do think it's the weakest. I don't know if you would agree. Out of the 6 episodes, I think this is probably the weakest, but for obvious reasons, it has been thrown together. Mark, do you think it is the weakest episode of the 6?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Right, let's go through them. First one, you're going to have to remind me because I've only watched these once, twice.
It's Trojan, Fathers and Sons. Then you've got Lemons. Entangled.
It's hard to really rate them. I think Fathers and Sons and Lemons are probably my 2 favourites. But Entangled's great, Trojan's great, this is great. Maybe.
I prefer this to Entangled.
All right, okay.
To be honest, I enjoy this, but I think the reason I enjoy this is in that way it is like old school Dwarf in that they're sitting around dealing with stuff. This reminds me heavily of Series 2 in that this isn't a Guelphs are on the starboard bow, or this is happening. This is blokes in space trying to get by, and the ship rebelling against them in a very petty administrative way.
Is it rebelling?
Yes.
Is it rebelling?
Rebelling.
It's
Brilliant.
It's that thing of 3 million years into deep space. Of course, things are going to come up red tape-wise that you couldn't possibly have thought of, and it's finally happening.
Well, let's dive into it then in detail. So let's go and do that now. Crichton's having a good time mopping and cleaning. Lister's not feeling too good about himself and the human race, is he?
I'll be honest, this did start weakly. I think the species and girls comparison thing is a bit lame. And I did worry for this episode the first time around. When Carl talks about how it was cobbled together from nothing, you can see how this was very much cobbled at the start. But it gets a lot better. It gets a lot better as we go along. But I think the opening scene is quite weak. Maybe this is the worst one because I don't feel like the others had weak opening scenes.
The joke goes on too long. It's almost a kind of switch to me for the Lister and Crichton dynamic from Series 7, where Crichton wouldn't listen and his paranoias and anxieties took over, where Lister's just completely not listening because he's so depressed. This also was a scene that made me go, oh, the mask's not great this series, is it? It is one of the first times where I really noticed the nose and the chin. Why is it like that? It's not that it's Robert Llewellyn's nose has grown. It's a Wicked Witch of the West nose. It's a hooked nose. It's quite odd. And the chin's pointy as well. So it's, if he was painted green, he could jump on a broomstick and fly away. And there was just something I noticed. It was like, and yeah, it's an odd one, but I enjoyed the scene. But I kind of got taken out of it because in this series, it didn't really bother me. And I think I said this during the watch through. When the promo pictures came out for this series, I was like, oh, everyone looks a bit, they have got older, but they don't look great in the press photos. But in the series, it never bothered me until I saw Crichton's nose in this one.
It didn't bother me, really. It looked like Crichton, perhaps, but it still looked like Crichton.
It still looks like Crichton, but it just bewildered me a bit that they've been doing this for so long. And either they must have lost the recipe to do the mask, but it's just that it's those two bits in particular that I thought was odd. And if it was a sort of stylistic choice of, let's make him look slightly different, then giving him more of a sort of square chin and a grot bag's nose is a bit of a strange one, really.
Ironically, the thing I actually really like about this scene is Crichton's reactions when he's like, oh, think about them again, sir. Oh.
Yeah, but you're a massive Crichton mark.
He does say flibbity-gibbet, which is a great word.
It is. He is trying his best, though, Crichton, to cheer him up. He does trying his best. Lister's obviously going through this existential crisis, so we get through that, and then Lister has that nothing compares to them, which is a bit weak, but
but legally distinct, Kurt.
Legally distinct. Legally distinct. Rest in peace, Sinead O'Connor.
Yes.
We love Sinead O'Connor. Fucking trailblazer and pioneer and wonderful. Fuck you, anarchist. She was great. Best pun ever. Venderbar. It's like Wonderbar, but it's a chucky machine. And I was like, yes, that's my kind of humour. I would absolutely buy chocolate from Venderbar, even if she wasn't sassy like this one.
I watch you when you went through the crack in your door. The things you do are so funny.
I love her. I genuinely liked all of the vending machines. There was the ones in the previous episode where they were talking about Chinese whispers.
You said you'd never use that term again, sir. You failed.
I did. Yeah, but it was contextualized.
Okay,
You're
that's
right,
fine.
I did.
Okay.
But I'd forgotten what the good term is.
That's all right. Somebody said it. Somebody said it at uni the other day, and I was like, I can't remember what the other term is. I want to know what the other term is. Anyway,
Yeah. We try our hardest, but nobody's fucking perfect. But anyway, I really want more of these. I want vending machine action in series 11 and 12 because this is an edition that I've really, really enjoyed. They're just these fun little characters that can come in and out, and you understand why they come in and out because obviously they're stuck to the floor. Well, not quite. Vendor bar spoilers. Vendor bar. I like her. I definitely want to see her, but I do want to see more vending machine action in.
I don't
series
know,
11 and 12.
Dave. I just love the way she talks. She sounds very similar to the girl who was in Entangled.
And I mean, we're moving ahead, but hot drinks is her accent. I was like, "Whoa,
Are you
hello,
eating on
hot
me?
drinks."
I didn't know. You touched my logo.
My logo. I mean, I was like, I would touch your fucking logo, and I'm bent as a 9-bob note, love.
You eating on me? Oh, they
She was great.
they are
Same,
most,
They're
same
brilliant.
actress as well, isn't it? Both machines, same actress.
Is it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
ah, dear. But yeah, I mean, as I say, it's like I watch you. It's just brilliant. And what do you think generally, if we're just talking about the dispensers, just about the way the Existential Crisis 4 Lister is the way that it's classic comedy, isn't it? So you do get those moments in a lot of comedy shows where, you know, they'll allude to something which is kind of like recognizable as such. And that's what they do Red Dwarf here, where, you know, it is like them having a bit of a lover's tiff. So that is interesting. What did you make to the lover's tiff, Mark?
It works in a really sitcom-y way, and it does sometimes feel like Red Dwarf is either science fiction or comedy. And they seem to have like very strong sitcom episodes and very strong sci-fi episodes. If they've got, for example, they might have a high sci-fi concept rather than whatever. But this is just pure kind of comedy of errors sitcom, and I'm all for it.
It's very Good Life, isn't it? Yeah, Mark knows what I mean. There's sort of the comedy of errors thing of they're talking about this jump up, he's going to make a nice pie, but the wife thinks he's going to cook the dog. You know, just something like that. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because it's simple. It's simple, but when written well, it's effective. Also, it's that thing of, like I say, like in series 2, where you sort of, you know, he's been in 3 million years, deep space, you know, it's been a while. Why not bang a vending machine?
Rimmer is currently facing a dilemma because the letters he's been sending, which and they've asked me, sir, to stop writing them, which was a bit signposted, to be fair. He kind of knew that was coming, but that's a classic Red Dwarfism, I think. And his recommendation to, like, sort of, you know, to him, and he's always trying to, like, sort of push that boundary, isn't he?
He is. My favourite thing about this scene is the fact he's warming up for his Sabutio tournament. Three years in a row he's been doing this Sabutio tournament, and I'm guessing he's playing against the Scutters, but he's lost. And not in the final, it's in the quarterfinals. So he's been going out 2 rounds before the end to the Scutters.
So I was going to be a pedant about this. I assumed it was the 4 crew members. And if there's only 4 people playing, you don't need quarterfinals. You need 8 players for a quarterfinal. I was like, has he lost playing himself or something?
So what we're saying is he's lost at the quarterfinal stage, but there's been 4 Scutters and them. And the quarterfinal stage is actually the first round that he's lost.
Yeah, he in the same way that he refers to, like, a loser of something as leader of the runners up, him going out in the quarterfinals statistically is him going out first round.
Yeah,
every year. I do like that he's been sending the letters, and then he's getting the running at risk of demotion because he's not reported to duty because he's been dead.
I've been dead after that.
Yeah, it's the thing of, again, Rimmer hasn't really done anything wrong. It's not, well, technically it is his fault he's dead because he did the drive plate, but that
Has he
doesn't
filled the
mean
accident
that,
report forms in, though? That's the question.
True. Yes, that is true, actually. It's just the thing of the ship being as base insane as the rest of them by going, well, we'll have to demote you because you've not turned up for duty. And it doesn't matter. They're 3 million years in deep space. Everyone else is presumably dead. Who cares if he gets pushed down to third technician, apart from Rimmer? It's the one thing he's got left.
That
outranks
Lister. Yeah.
Well, we're talking a little bit about Rimmer because obviously we're talking about the endeavors as well, and it kind of mentions about the report logbook and stuff like that because he's going through it, and that is the build up to the end of the story because he's kind of talking about this logbook and he's going to write it all down and he needs to find the case, and eventually he does so via Crichton saying unless you're looking after somebody, and that's the kind of opening to what Rimmer needs to do. And given that Lister is in the way that he is and he's feeling that depressive and that he's kind of looked at just what he could potentially do, he sees an opportunity there, and I think that's quite good of Rimmer to actually see that opportunity. But things like, as I say, we can talk about that general thread at the moment, but the things like CCTV, get that on there. I can see what I'm doing. What do you think to the thread mark of that, of Rimmer kind of building up to that perspective of he's got to look after the Lister, who's what his job is meant to keep him sane anyway. So it is an interesting concept.
It's very Rimmer and very Red Dwarf, and I think I've already said this multiple times that this just feels like it fits with everything I might have expected with Red Dwarf. Yeah, I don't think there really is anything that made me go, Dave have got it wrong at all. Once it gets going, there's some very, very strong gags in here, and it comes from this scene onwards. I realise I'm probably not quite the journalist I once was when it comes to this. I'm just giddy.
You're just going, it's Red Dwarf. It's Red Dwarf. It's Red Dwarf. It's Red Dwarf, Carl. It's Red Dwarf.
It is Red Dwarf. Let me see if I've got anything interesting in my notes. No, hot drinks is sexy. Vendor bar's a great pun. No, I'm struggling. Sorry. Okay.
It's kind of this weird way of Rimmer showing affection almost when he says, your pity party's not gone unnoticed. I've written this special report and others are going to see it. It's kind of like a very Rimmer way of going, cheer the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we've noticed you're sad. Pull yourself out of it.
He's crap at it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's crap. Yeah. He's basically giving him some home truths like, oh, you dunk stuff in the fish tank. He's basically just giving him a few things of snap out of it, man. Because Lister says he's suicidal, but I think Lister's being over dramatic in these ones as he tends to be. Rimmer's sort of going I'm going to write all down all this stuff it is and other people are going to see it. It almost sort of shame him out of being depressed.
Yeah. So that's a British thing to do though, isn't it? That is totally a British thing to kind of come and say, come on, get a grip, man.
But he does say every problem has an answer. So he's trying to help, I think, but in a very Rimmer way. He's kind of taken over from Holly, the keeping him sane thing, because, there's nobody else. Crichton's a bag of neuroses and just follows him around, and the cat's playing with string.
Or playing charades.
Or playing charades.
We haven't seen the cat yet, and we don't see the cat for 12 minutes in this episode. It is 12 minutes before you get to see the cat.
But when you do see him...
Before we talk about that, though, I want to talk about the sneaky arm trick. Have either of you ever used the sneaky arm trick?
What's the sneaky arm trick?
The yawn when you sat next to someone and you go, and put your arm behind them.
No.
So I have, but it was ironic.
Of course it was, Mark.
No, it was deliberately ironic, and he knew what I was doing.
I'm just queuing up the Grinder story. We need to design some sort of music cue for when Mark goes on a story time. That's what we need.
Well, that was a clean one.
Okay.
What's that Simon Bates music? The For You music.
I mean, if we're going to have music for me, I think what we should do is we should find the old soundtrack from Neighbours for when Bouncer did something silly, because I liked that. So
I was thinking more some sort of funky porn 70s bassline music.
Oh,
It's Mark's music.
not comedy dog music.
Not
No,
comedy dog
because
music.
let's be fair, Mark. Most of these stories will end up with, and then I shagged him.
Or them. Or them.
Yeah, or them, yeah.
And you can take that whichever way you want. Them as in a pronoun or them as in multiple people.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. There is the gag in this when they're talking about romance. It's an old gag, but it's a good gag. You thought Areolas was a Spanish goalkeeper.
Brilliant.
It's you can tell for this one that Doug and whoever else was in the room, probably even the cast, were like, we need to fill this. Yeah. Let's come up with some gags. You know, I mean, you've got a few people who've done stand up in the room, so it's fun. It's a chance for them to play off each other. Like, this is a long scene with just Rimmer and Lister talking about romance, and it's the equivalent of a bunk scene, but they just happen to be in Starbug controls or wherever they are. So yeah, I like it. I think it's good fun.
I think what's important about these, in inverted commas, bunk scenes is that it is kind of established Red Dwarfiness. And this is the cheapo episode. We know it's the cheapo episode. We know it's the one that was cobbled together quickly. But it feels right because that's what Red Dwarf actually was before it was a cheapy episode and before it was cobbled together. They wrote stuff like this.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good status quo to fall back on, really, isn't it? That they can actually pull something together.
It's a cheap status quo to fall back on when everything goes to shit and you run out of budget.
I mean, effectively, my back screen, my screen at the moment on the Zoom, which is obviously the backdrop, is effectively what they did. You know, they basically put a Zoom call on and put a virtual background on of the recordings of the videos. That's what they did, just to keep it going because the sets were torn down. So the fact that they've had to do that and try and hide that fact, which I think they're doing not a bad job of, to be fair, because when I didn't notice it the first time. I think a couple of times later I was like, oh, there's something not quite right. And then I learned what the situation was. It's not something that jumps out at you. And because of as you say, the kind of the kind of low risk kind of value of what they're doing, just being just the comedy between the characters is part of it. Shall we talk about the cat then and his charades, Mark?
It's the first outfit I wasn't sure I wanted.
Oh, okay.
I want the netgear. But I don't know. The outfit was pushing it.
Interesting, because you've been red hot on the other one so far.
Nah. I mean, I don't think it looks great for the cat. It's just whether or not I want it for me.
Ah, okay. What do you make to the whole gang getting involved? Because as I say, it's another like kind of elongated scene, isn't it? It's kind of just playing a little bit. All right, we'll just try and do what sort of serious face. Okay,
it's fun.
Yeah.
It is fun, and it is clearly filler. But oh man, is just the greatest gag of the episode. It's the greatest gag of the episode, and
I don't know.
It is worth the wait.
Why you keep saying it's a dying death worm for?
I like the thought that this is ideas that they would have had and just shot down for episodes, like zombies, a giant death worm, Kachansky's back, Rimmer's got a virus. You know, it's just.
Well, it's good to point that you mentioned Kachansky, actually, because that has been right the way through this Red Dwarf 10, that they've actually keep going to that. And we know behind the scenes, after just talking about that with Mark last week, we were talking about the fact that her story arc was going to be quite a bit more significant than it actually turned out to be, which is interesting. And again, another name check for her.
I mean, I know you can't tell me, but I'm pretty sure that I'd know if Kachansky returned in 11 or 12. I'm sure I'd have heard through the grapevine. And that's kind of sad. I think it would have been nice to have brought her back.
It's interesting because the thing they kept saying was Kachansky's coming back. They weren't saying Chloe Annette's coming back. So it makes me wonder what they were planning. If it was going to be Chloe Annette, if it was going to be Claire Grogan, or if it was going to be somebody completely different. I wouldn't have been shocked purely from a budgetary standpoint, because they never said it was money that there was the problem. It was production issues. I wouldn't have been shocked if it was somebody else entirely, like a third Kachansky.
I don't think that would have mattered.
I mean, Chloe Annette Kachansky is a different Kachansky anyway. So, and the Claire Grogan Kachansky is still in this universe. So,
You could just explain it away. This is where she's come from. She's come from a different universe. This and this one, she happens to look different.
And this is Red Dwarf. They wouldn't do that.
No, they wouldn't bother.
It would just be like, hey, Kachansky. The mail pod's arrived. Oh, man. It's great because it's fundamentally different on two different levels. There's one that it's like he's not understood the game.
It's so dumb and so cat and so brilliant. And yes, it takes too long, but I don't care because that punchline.
I wonder if it's improvised. The death worm thing, the reaction at the end to the death worm thing of where you're getting that from. The fact that Crichton says the same thing twice. There might be a take where it is densely scripted, but I think this is one where they've just been told, go for it. Fill 2 minutes. Yeah. We're
Just
going
say
into
stuff.
an ad break.
And I think that's interesting that they probably could do that. They know these characters so well and they can almost ad-lib. And yeah, that's remarkable, but they wouldn't have been able to do that in series 1.
I mean, this is an episode that could have been, in the same way that Marooned could have been, you could have done this as a play. If there was a stage show, you could have done this episode. And as I said, you could do Marooned. It's 2 corridors and the drive room and the sleeping quarters and the front of the ship. But you don't necessarily have to use the front of the ship. So you could very easily have done this. I'm imagining the stage now, just have a vending machine on each side and then they light up when they go to those bits. And they'd probably have to get 2 actors just so you don't get mixed up between the main accent and the hello accent that she's doing for the other one.
Vendor bar and hot drinks.
Yeah.
You did my logo.
Vendor bar. It's a pun.
Vendor bar and hot drinks. My nicknames for Colin and Matt.
Which one's which?
Oh, Colin's hot drinks.
Anyway, the mail pod has arrived. And this is a bit old school, isn't it? With them going through the mail and seeing like who wins.
What, wasn't it better than... Yes, it was Better Than Life, wasn't it? Where they were doing exactly the same thing, basically.
Rimmer does win, but it's a parking fine, which is not the Norweb thing, but it's a parking fine. But anyway, yes, Lister gets the Haley Summers letter, which is interesting because we've never heard of Haley Summers yet, and this is the first time we've heard of Haley, so...
Could she be the girl that he did it in the bunker with? On the golf course?
No, didn't he say her name?
Well, we know about Pete Trance's sister, because that was the siren.
Well, no, he was 12 when he was in the golf course, and by this one it sounds like they lived with each other.
Okay, so it was later than both of those. And I do wonder if he got Haley's buttocks and squeezed them together to make a juicy giant peach.
Oh, yeah. We all met each other the other day and you didn't squeeze my buttocks together to make one juicy giant peach.
I'm not going to squeeze your buttocks together to make a juicy giant peach.
There was only a dozen people there, Mark. It would have been fine.
Plus, I wasn't there, so you've got to do it when I'm there.
True, we've got to wait for Kurt.
Yeah. It's a long way. It's a long way, and I was at work, and I sent you a video of me sitting in an empty office. It was great.
Loved every minute of it. If you notice, Kurt, I'm holding my phone in the photograph of all of us that has a picture of you on it.
I have. Yeah, I don't know where did you get that from? Was it my
Your
Facebook?
Facebook page?
Okay. I was like, that's a band picture. Where have you got that from?
We met for Colin's birthday. It was lovely, but Kurt
nice.
Decided he didn't like us enough to come.
And well, I've got the furthest to go and have work commitments, unfortunately. But yes, yeah, too much. It was too much for me to be able to do it.
There's a bit in this I really love, which is, yes, they're sort of bickering and doing the like childish 1-0 to me. I've got this letter 1-0. When Lister gets one and he starts winding Rimmer up, I don't know whether this was a conscious thing, but Rimmer's smiling in that kind of matey way. And it does show, like, after all this time that they do have a laugh from time to time. And it's again, it could just be the way that they've tried to play it, but I thought it was just a nice touch that Rimmer's like, yeah, you've got me, and actually just enjoying it.
Yeah, because the way he does it was like sort of, yes, 1-0, Rimsey. He's like properly enjoying it. Yeah, I get there is a difference there.
It did feel a little bit like, more so than any of the other episodes in this series, actually, that there was a real kind of, not explicitly so, but a kind of found family vibe. And, you know, I'm queer, so I'm more likely to engage with that kind of thing.
Are you?
What?
I didn't realise you were queer, Mark.
Oh, for fuck's sake. But what I'm saying is the found family vibes is something that is new, but works.
They are a dysfunctional family. It's two brothers. Their dysfunctional sister of a droid.
Yeah, definitely sister.
And a cat.
Yeah?
The cat. Or baby brother.
My cat is definitely family.
Lister reads the letter. Well, Rimmer reads the letter, actually. Rimmer does read the letter. And it says, I bet she was a man. Bet she was a man. And then continues on to read the letter to say that she is indeed pregnant.
The lead up to this I thought was quite odd. The real McCoy thing and the squidgy nose thing, yeah, I get. Because you're like, oh, this person did this and that reminds me of that. The real McCoy thing, that's not something I'd pick up from any of my previous relationships. Like, oh, they always used to say the real McCoy, anything like that. Because all it made me think of was crisps.
Yeah, that's all it made me feel like saying, yeah.
Maybe that's a Dave thing of like, look, if you can drop in a mention of the real McCoy, we can cater for the next series. Just crisps.
Mark, what did you think to the scene then about the revelation?
For her to be pregnant, how long was he on Red Dwarf? It doesn't feel like the... You know what I mean? It feels like there was too much time.
It would have had to have been during the prequel, during Red Dwarf Titan. It's got to be in it.
Well, I would say isn't it in the first series where it says he's been with the company 18 months?
It could have been shore leave, couldn't it? Or it could have been anything. But yeah, I didn't overthink it because as a plot line, it was fun.
I mean, he does wind up on Red Dwarf by accident. Essentially, he gets blasted and wakes up on Titan. I mean, I don't think it's ever established why he got so blasted, woke up on Titan. It could be because she dumped him. Because it's like he said, she's the only one he ever cared about that dumped him. It's the only girl I ever cared about who didn't dump me, but she took a job that she couldn't give up. So they just amicably separated. So that could have led on to, maybe this is all setting up Titan. We're going to meet Hayley Summers.
It's definitely not setting up Titan because Doug would not have been talking.
Oh, yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I don't think that'll be connected up. But it was Roy. Now, Hayley and Roy, and the fact that they mentioned she was a man.
Oh, yeah.
Coronation Street,
yeah.
Hayley and Roy.
I've never watched Coronation Street in my entire life.
Hayley used to be a man in Coronation Street when Craig Charles was part of that show, and Roy Cropper was in a relationship with her husband.
Wasn't she the first? Was she the first sort of regular trans character in a British soap or something like that?
I think it might have been, yeah.
Yeah.
And
she was in it for years, and it was never played for... They had the initial thing of people finding out, and and then they learn, love, and share, and then she just becomes a character who happens to be trans.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah, she was in it for, it must be a good decade.
Yeah. Hayley and Roy were kind of a long term. Not 4,000 episode Ken Barlow term, but...
No. Ken's going to be there for another 4,000. That's the thing. We're found an immortal, and it's Will Roach. But Roach is in the name. Yeah, they did the initial I'm trans, and then people reacting badly, and then adjusting and accepting. I don't think it was ever really brought up again.
No, because I think Roy took his time, like to kind of
yes, because he was in love with her.
Yeah.
Fun story. My friend works, or she did work at the time, as a focus puller on the cameras for Emmerdale, and I might have told this story before. And she did their live episode.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I messaged her afterwards, about half an hour afterwards, like, "How are you?" And she was like, "I'm so knackered, it's unbelievable," because they were all so stressed, just like holding the camera like.
Those are the days, weren't they? Because like ER did it.
Yeah,
they did it.
I think it's the American ones. They do them twice, don't they, for East and West?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was Roseanne, or the spin-off. They were doing one about the election, and they did it twice for East and West Coast. And I think one of them they didn't know the result, and one of them they did know the result. I think
Lister, obviously, he's on a bit of an emotional roller coaster now with the fact that, Roy potentially is an issue. But Kat comes to speak to Lister, which I think is the funniest moment of this episode.
It's been done before, and it's been done well before. The duck soup one was particularly good, but I really enjoyed this. Cat is so utterly hapless in his attempt to be kind that it's even worse than when he's being selfish. It's just brilliant, and it's so Cat, and I really enjoyed it
because they did.
It reminded me a bit of the don't think about Miss Kachansky and her ex-boyfriend Tim joke. My favourite bit about this was the bit where he's right. When she's working late all night, guess what? Banks close at 5. Which is like, yeah, actually. And then,
in the thing for the full weekend.
Yeah, locked herself in the vault for the full weekend. It's like the joke about the finger wetting machine is as smutty as I think Red Dwarf's gonna get.
So funny though. Finger wetting machine working overtime, and the way he's got his hand and like mimicking it, it's just
and
classic gold.
The facial expression. Chris Barry does it as well. The facial expression they pull for it, and Lister does a really good like rubbing the temples. I may go insane. Craig Charles has got that, maybe just from life, has got the really good sort of like, oh God, it's all too much. This is the thing, it's quite good to have everybody back for these later series because everybody's grown as actors. You can say on the first couple of series that, Craig Charles was a poet. He wasn't an actor, really. Although I think he did The Marksman by the time we were in series 2, which I believe we are going to do, aren't we, Mark, at some point?
Dispenser 34 wants to see around the corner.
Yeah. Vendabar, call her by her real name. Vendabar.
Sorry, I'm a dead naming her.
No, just I like the name Vendabar.
It is though, isn't it? It's Dispenser 34, but it's Vendabar.
I think we kind of skipped over a bit. They fell out earlier in the episode because she heard that she was going to another machine.
Hot drinks.
And
he touched her logo.
Yeah. Although it sounds like Vendabar does do hot drinks as well because Lister asks her for coffee.
It says, your tea's much better than their tea. I like yours. And what I will say, actually, and because it's thrown together, I don't know if you notice it, watch it again. It's just suddenly come back to me. Robert, Craig, both speak and they're talking off screen, so it looks like they're either looking at somebody doing the voice acting for the vending machine, or they're reading the script that they've just thrown together, because if you look, they are not looking at that machine.
I mean, the scene where Crichton's explaining Rimmer's got to prove that he's got to get signed off, otherwise he gets demoted. Robert Llewellyn is reading cards, and there is no covering it up when you realise that he is reading cards, because the eyes are moving, the head's going a bit, and he's reading the cards out as well as he can. I haven't got the Blu-ray of this one, but I can imagine that if there is a commentary, it's them going like, whoop, yeah, Rob.
With that as well, in the scene in the bunks, because it is on blue screen, or green screen, whichever one it is, if he is reading at that point, but because it's a 2-shot, they've obviously got to film them at different times. In some ways, looking at them, you could imagine that Chris Barry or Robert Llewellyn is off screen reading the lines back to them, and then they've had to film it twice, because that's the way I felt that might be happening as well. So it could be Chris Barry holding the actual cards up.
I mean, you know what? It's only until you've noticed, like the shots where Craig Charles is talking to the machine.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't told me that that's blue or green screen.
I don't think that's that they're blue or green screen. They're just talking off screen. They're just talking like beyond. They're not looking at the actual dispenser. But
there's not been many bits in this where I've gone, oh, that's green screen or that's blue screen, unless it's something like the cockpit, and then it's very, very obvious. But it has to be because it's a cockpit.
The backdrop I've got on is fairly all right. You know what I mean? So the fact that in 2012 with red cameras and all kinds and the blue screen or green screen that they've got, I think it's a decent job. I mean, I wouldn't say struggle to see it, but it doesn't throw me off when I watch it, you know, knowing it's there. Sometimes you can feel that it actually would throw you off, but it doesn't. I think it works quite well, to be fair.
I mean, this is the thing we have to remember is this is Dave.
Yeah.
And all of Dave's original shows are, you know, chairs in a studio with people talking for the most part. You know, you've got all of your, like, Judge Ramesh and, you know, Alan Davis people talking, that one. And, yeah, they're all, I can imagine, budget-wise, very, very easy to do. So for Dave, this must be, I can imagine a good chunk of Dave's production budget does go towards Red Dwarf.
It won't be special in a minute. That's something we've heard before, but still works quite well. I wouldn't say it lands perfectly, but it does the job.
Yeah.
Because the toilet rolls have been like conserved, haven't they? Because they're just moving the budget around. And being in businesses before where you look at budgets and that is effectively what happens, it's like, well, there's like, you know, we're overspent on the cleaning budget, yeah, but we're well underspent there. So you just move it around, it's fine. But yeah, so there's the conservation stuff of them trying to like sort of move the money around and things is another little side project that Crichton's got going on. So that's a story that Crichton's touched upon, isn't it?
Yeah, the wheeling around all the bog roll.
That gag was a thing, so that he could have Crichton wheeling around a gigantic wheelbarrow full of bog roll.
I must admit, it's the subplot that I either didn't get properly or didn't care about in this episode, because it just seemed to lead up to the cat needs bog roll at the very end. And there wasn't really a build as to what the cat's done that needs him to evacuate his bowels as desperately as he does. But yeah, I suppose when he's saying like there's none on the whole ship, if there's like none on the whole ship, then what Crichton's got is a trifling amount of toilet paper. But
let's go to the callback to Crichton and Lister, that kind of aspect to it. The vending machine around the corner. Oh, she's never seen a ceiling before.
It's definitely a callback, but I think it's different enough that while we can all go, lol, it's a callback.
Yeah.
It's not shit. It is its own gag and it is funny.
He's trying to pick her up.
Like he was trying to pick up hot drinks.
All credit to Chris Barry for doing the walk past double take. It's a great one. All credit to the actress as well. Really should say her name at some point, but all credit to the actress who is the vending machine. How the voice changes. It was like, and how it's the way she goes, "Oh, I knew you'd come around, you naughty boy."
It's great.
It's like, oh, she did want Dave to shag her.
And the thing is, we've got to establish that electronic devices have significant personalities because the toaster was so unique. It's really, really well done. It's great fun and it's dumb as fuck.
And you get invested in the life of this vending machine. I don't think they come back to this in future series, but you know, I'd happily have the vending machines be recurring characters in Red Dwarf that pop up every so often. In the same way the toaster does. Have them next to each other and, you know, get somebody else in to be one of the voices and just have them be, you know, have like a Statler and Waldorf sort of relationship of them seeing everything going on Red Dwarf. Maybe they're in Titan.
Brilliant.
We do find the letter. Second letter. He doesn't want to open it. And he starts to going, how much of a good mother that she is. She'll be a great mother. Blah, 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 blah. What a slag end of episode.
It's one of the weaker end of episode gags, isn't it?
It made me slightly nostalgic. You don't use slag much in British telly anymore. The only one I can think of is any time Cat Slater on EastEnders has like a drunken revelation. There's a thing going about on TikTok at the moment, which is a soundbite of Cat Slater from EastEnders going, "I wasn't just a little bit of a slag. I was a total slag." That's a sound that people are using a lot at the moment. And that's the only other time I can think of the word slag being used in recent years. But it does call back to Lister has used the word slag before. Polymorph, let's get out there and twat it. Come on then, you slags. I'll take all of you. I don't know, if he'd said, there's almost a comedic element to it. Because I think if he'd said any other thing, like if he'd called her a bitch or something like that.
Well, I found it on Tongue Tied. Writer and director Doug Naylor considered changing Lister's final line to the episode from slag to trollop. After he feared it would be judged as being too harsh, he changed his mind upon seeing the live audience's reaction to the line slag, however. So he was going to call her a trollop.
I think trollop would have worked as well. I think slag is just about okay. I regularly refer to myself as a slag when I've had a particularly promiscuous few weeks.
It's interesting how Doug, because there's a couple of times in this series where he's kind of gone, I wasn't too sure whether to put it in, I might change it. There's been a couple of times he's done that.
It's a very 80s insult. And Mark, you're a lush, darling. Don't never call yourself a slag.
Oh, I am a slag, though.
Oh, you're a fabulous slag.
Massive slag.
Yeah. But I think this worked. Trollop sounds almost like too posh of a word for Lister to say, whereas slag would fit. It would fit a Liverpudlian lad from the 80s. You know, it's...
I use both trollop and slag to describe my cat because she really doesn't mind who it is as long as they've got a warm leg. She'll sit on them. When she does that, she meets someone new and she like sits on them. I'm like, well, you trollop or slag.
Trollop for me, probably going far too into this. Trollop for me is a period drama insult.
True. I mean, I use floozy as well.
Yeah. So floozy's like it's a Western insult. The sheriff said, oh, that floozy, that damn floozy. But I do accent work.
That was a lovely American accent. I enjoyed it.
You didn't talk about my logo.
We're all available. We're all available for voiceover work.
Excuse me. I have been a voice actor for like 3 lines on a actually quite popular podcast. Nah.
I did a whole video game once and it got cancelled.
Brilliant.
Any final thoughts, chaps, on this episode before we head into next week and the beginning?
I really enjoyed this episode. It is what it is. It's we haven't got enough money, so we need to really fill something. So we need to fill an episode. But for Red Dwarf, that works because we can go to bunk scenes, we can go to large chunks of dialogue. We only need a letter to trigger an entire plot. So if you think about it, the only things that trigger this plot is 2 vending machines, a letter, and a load of bog roll. And you don't necessarily need the bog roll. Like Doctor Who was renowned for having like an episode a series in the early series, which was the quote unquote no money episode, where it was just like a 2-hander or something like that. And with varying results, whereas with Red Dwarf, you can do it pretty easily and get away with it because the writing's good. And I think that this shows in this episode.
Final thoughts?
Pretty much the same. I think it's remarkably good for a episode that was cobbled together and clearly was an episode that they wrote because they ran out of budget, etc., etc. And I think it's a credit to the writing and a credit to the actors that it is as funny as it is. And I want more vending machines in the next 2 series.
We shall wait to see if you get any more vending machines in the next 2 series.
I'm just going to find the name of that actress just so we can give her credit because we haven't said her name. Ilsa Yor. So Ilsa Yor is the one who played both vending machines in this episode. Well done, because she was absolutely brilliant.
I agree. That is it for this week. Next week, we are looking at the final episode of Red Dwarf 10. Carl, where can people find you online? Have you got a really short moniker that you can produce to somebody where people can find you really easily and see all of your links together?
You can find me on Linktree /I am Mr. Carl, and it's the unabbreviated MISTER because I found that is a bit of an issue sometimes. I found out the other day that because that is part of my email as well, and I found out someone has had my email wrong for 5 years, and that's why I've not received any emails from them.
Fair
wow.
But yes, Linktree /I am Mr. Carl. There's links to all my bits and bobs on there. And yeah, you can find me on social media on that handle as well.
Okay, Mark, do you have an availability of a link that will link to all of your available stuff that you are currently doing on the internet?
No, at Mark Adams HC on Twitter and the same on Instagram. And if you did want to listen to me playing an evil doctor in a horror podcast, have a look at Hello from the Hallowoods. I'm only in like 2 of their hundreds of episodes, but yeah, evil doctor. I got paid and everything. Voice actor, yo. Other than that, Chucky Vision is my podcast about child's play. At Chucky Vision on Twitter.
Well, if we're plugging that kind of stuff, I'm in a film called Wasteland that's on YouTube and Amazon Prime and on various streaming services.
Are you?
I am. I'm in 2 scenes. I'm not particularly good in it because the direction was crap and the film's not particularly good either, but the lead actors are really good. Check me out. I got dubbed in German at one point.
That is legendary. You can find me on Linktree, linktr.ee/rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE, where you'll find, generally at the moment, doing a lot of Lost stuff, because Lost is 20 years old this year, 2024.
Fucking hell.
Yes. It's something else. So yeah, until next time, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Dear Dave. And until then,
Logo.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.